Welcome to a special bonus episode of the AWIT podcast. I am your host, Rae Smith. Today, I have the founder and executive director of the Rocky Mountain French Bulldog Rescue, Kelly Money. I was excited to have her come on as our first rescue here on the podcast, and just to kind of highlight some of the great work that they do, especially with it being Giving Tuesday, and it's the end of the year. So just wanted to show, our support from AWIP for you guys and what you do to help all of the Frenchies out there. So Kelly, thank you for joining me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Rae. It's been quite a year, so we're excited to be here, and I'm excited to talk a little bit about French Bulldogs this morning.
Good. Let's jump into that right off the bat then. Why don't you tell me about your rescue? How did you come to find it? And just kind of talk about, the dogs that you rehome, where you get them from, all that.
Okay. So I started this rescue, Rocky Mountain French Bulldog Rescue. I started it in 2014. Kind of a funny story. I really wanted a ferret, and my husband, at the time, said no ferrets. So I had been in love. I was a vet tech for many years when I put myself through college. And I had a friend who had a French Bulldog at that time. Oh my goodness, back in like 2004, before there were French Bulldogs everywhere. And I was in love with them. And when he said no ferret, I said, I'm getting a French Bulldog. So I did some research, and I ended up reaching out to French Bulldog Rescue Network, who is one of the giant national rescues in the country. And they had a paralyzed French Bulldog that they had pulled from a shelter in Florida. So I actually flew to Florida and stayed with their wonderful foster mom. She let me stay in her house, and I brought home this 14-pound little gremlin dog who was amazing and loved me, but she was paralyzed. At that time, I was a special needs, severe needs high school teacher, and I also had a background in veterinary medicine. So I really wanted to contribute to the breed and do something for a dog that, was on death's row at a shelter. And I got on Facebook and got on social medias that were, small back 10 years ago. And people in Denver area started realizing that I had quite a bit of knowledge about dogs and paralysis and health issues. And her name was Dora, and it just kind of bloomed from there. It wasn't something I set out to do. I didn't mean to rescue almost 600 French Bulldogs in the last 10 years. I just kind of wanted to share my story and share what I could about, this is how we're going to make diapers. Now they make diaper covers you can buy on Amazon. But at that time, I had come up with a pattern on how to make diapers for an incontinent bulldog. So there's a lot of learning, a lot of, figuring it out as I go. I am on personally my dog right now, Kevin, for those of you who know Kevin. Kevin is a spina bifida puppy. He's 5 years old. He does walk. He's very, very mobile, but he is incontinent. So the rescue just kind of took off from there. I quit teaching in December 2019 and do this full time now. It's been close to 600 dogs in the last 10 years.
Oh, that's crazy. Where do you get them all from?
A lot of them, when I started, a lot of them were owner surrenders, but more and more we have stepped forward. I have a great board behind me. I have some great volunteers behind me. I tend to be the face. I tend to be the one talking a lot, but there is a whole village of people backing us up here, from donors to volunteers. And so we started, when I say we, that's who I mean. We started, owner surrenders, but now we've kind of stepped forward in the last couple of years as one of the biggest French Bulldog specific special needs rescues. So our most recent ones have come from Denver Animal Protection, from the shelter itself, Dumb Friends League, other rescues that don't know how to deal with, incontinent, immobile, severe behavior needs, palate issues. Right now, we seem to be getting a lot of ear infections. The dogs need their eardrums removed. And you wouldn't think that about Frenchies because they have the big ears, but they
Right.
have chronic allergies. So we've just kind of stepped forward as the special needs rescue. So we get them from all over the country, from rescues all over the country, in shelters, owner surrenders. We are lucky that we can fly French Bulldogs because they're small enough to fit in the cabin. So we fly them in from all over.
Can you talk some more about their genetic conditions and any Brachycephalic dog, really, their costs of taking care of their health? I have a pug myself, so
Oh, yeah.
I am very well aware of how expensive that is, and the cost of veterinary care is just out of this world as it is right now. But especially for Brachycephalics and French Bulldogs, they have very unique health needs and they cost a lot. Talk about that. And is there an average an average number you have about how much you spend on each dog?
For us, yes, of course. Like I said, we're mostly special needs. 83% of our dogs that came in 2023 were severe special needs dogs. And a lot of it is, they're an amazing breed. We all love them. They're cute. They're cuddly. They remind us of human children. But what's not being talked about enough is that genetic condition that they are a brachycephalic breed. And what that means is, they have the cute smushed faces. They're brachycephalic. So here I'm talked about as like brachy dogs. So brachy dogs have the same amount of nose as a lab, but it's all squished in. So one of their biggest issues is they have an elongated soft palate. So that palate, that's at the roof of our mouths, you can feel it with your own tongue. Stick your tongue back there, you'll feel it. That palate tends to elongate in brachycephalic breeds. So when it elongates, that means it's covering up their trachea, so they can't breathe. So when they get excited, it elongates and it fattens even more. So it's trying to take air in there, and then it gets fatter and fatter, and it covers that trachea. All those cute noises that we hear that we love, and we do love them. I love hearing my dog snore because that tells me he's alive at night.
Yeah.
But that is them not being able to breathe because that palate is covering their airway. They simply can't get air in. The more they can't get air in, the more they suffer, the bigger the palate gets. And it's just this cycle. And that's why they can overheat so easily. And people don't understand that they overheat so easily. I've seen French Bulldogs overheat and pass out in 68 degrees in Denver.
Yep.
It's something that we don't talk about. Just about every French Bulldog needs that palate cut and what's called BOA's surgery. So they have the sacculas, which kind of like these little bulbs right here. Those get swollen. Those need to be taken out. That palate needs to be cut. Their noses need to be opened up. If you look at your pug or a French Bulldog your neighbor might have, you'll see they have little tiny nose slits. Very easily the vets could open those up. And we do that for any dog that goes under anesthesia. We'll open the nose up. We won't do palate on any Frenchie. Palate surgery is something you need to talk to your vet about and talk to a specialist about because it is not an easy surgery. It's really hard for them to recover from. French Bulldogs do die under palate surgery like 25% of the time. So the reason they have palate issues is because of how we've bred them. They don't reproduce naturally. Most of them have to be artificially inseminated. Most of them have to have C-sections. Every time I hear about somebody letting their Frenchie give birth, and the next breath they're like, yeah, but mom didn't make it, because they have these little narrow hips that we created. And they have these big fat heads that we created. So when you're looking at this breed or any brachycephalic breed, you really need to take those into consideration. And then they have these little tiny, and pugs are the same way, they have these little tiny, cute, short backs.
Yep.
Right now, we're looking at over 50% of French Bulldogs being paralyzed. So when they're about 2 or 3 years old, and we're starting to see it sooner, which is really sad, but about 2 or 3 years old, their discs and their backs, they just start degenerating, and it's called IVDD. And it can happen while they're sleeping. They can wake up paralyzed. And it's just those discs just kind of pop and swell. So about 50% of Frenchies are going paralyzed right now. And it is genetic. It is something we can test for. UC Davis has an IVDD test. If people want to breed their dogs, they can test both parents to see if it's genetic.
Right.
And then please don't breed them. If it says yes, your dog has IVDD,
You just have to
don't breed
ask
them.
them, please.
Yes, right.
But I think a big problem is that, a lot of people don't do the testing, even if they are, professional breeders. And, I don't want to dive so much into, these puppy mill cases and stuff, which we know that they don't do. Like, it's a very different story between someone who, is doing small batches and whatnot. But a lot of them are accidental litters too, and just people who don't, keep them separated. And, I guess that kind of brings me to our next topic, which is that earlier this year in Ojai, California, they passed an ordinance called the Companion Animal Protection Ordinance, which was not specifically made for brachycephalic dogs alone, but it does put a lot of restrictions on the type of dogs and cats that can be bred. And this got massive support from PETA and the International Organization of Vets Against Brachycephalism, a lot of other people. But there were a lot of people who were upset about this. There were a lot of organizations that advocated against it. The AKC was a huge organization that was completely opposed to this. And if for those who, for the listeners who are not aware of this, I just want to kind of list out real quick here just some of the characteristics that are listed in the ordinance that that are banned. So any dogs or cats, displaying these kinds of characteristics are not allowed to be bred there. So that's the depending on the snout length, whether they have labored breathing, head and body shapes that which increase perinatal complications, or being able to mate, not being able to mate naturally, bulging eyes, vertebral malformations, sensory loss, skin folds, those stenotic nares, stenotic nostrils, an unnatural posture, lameness or movement disorders, neurological disorders. It's a whole lot of stuff. And that's why I say it's not just for brachycephalics, because a lot of other dogs, such as dachshunds and unethically bred German shepherds and such, fall into this category. But Kelly, I know that you're aware of that, and that you're that you saw that law pass earlier this year. I want to take a quote from AKC after this passed. I'm going to read this out, and I want to get your thoughts on what they said about this. So, after the ordinance passed, the AKC released a very long opinion, part of which was this. The unethical breeding ordinance prohibits any person from Ojai from breeding a dog or cat with congenital anatomical features that are likely to cause the animal or its offspring to suffer pain, deformity, or difficulty expressing natural behaviors, difficulty breathing, difficulty with physical exertion or exercise, or difficulty breeding, and supports this prohibition with a preamble of findings that feature unsubstantiated claims about the number and distribution of animal suffering. What do you think about their statement on that?
I think that the AKC probably sees healthy dogs.
Mm-hmm.
I have met my spina bifida boy. So spina bifida is not breed specific. It just happens. So my spina bifida boy loves agility. He can run like the best of them. His snout is still very, very small. It's still under that third of his head, but he does not have the typical brachycephalic breathing issues that, like, my tiny girl who came from a breeder, that she has. So she's had her palate cut 3 times and it keeps growing back on her. I think the AKC has probably not been as educated as rescues are on the physical deformities that some of these dogs have. They do see some beautiful, beautiful dogs. And if it has been shown to them, I think they may be looking the other way on some of these.
Well, they have a very long history of defending breeders, and of course, they get their breeding club memberships and all of that. So it's not a huge surprise, at least to us, that they would very much be against a ban like this.
I think that, the biggest component that we need to look at with this ban is the education. And, it's the same ban. It's very similar. I don't want to say it's the same because I don't know the exact details, but the UK put in a ban very similar to this a few years ago. And the biggest part of it is that their snout has to be more than a third the size of their head. And I do think that that's important. I do think that we can breed French Bulldogs and other brachycephalic breeds with the personality, with that cute quirkiness, with the same basic looks, with staying within health needs of these dogs. For me personally, education of breeders, education of owners, education of potential owners, and advocating at state and federal levels for that education. I think it's more important that our breeders are regulated than just banning straight across like this. Absolutely, we need to start doing something about this. One thing that we want to do as a rescue is start advocating, is start getting more and more into, that political realm almost. My vice president, who is unable to be here, Michelle, that's one of her main goals for this next year. As you know, rescues and shelters in the state of Colorado have to be licensed by Department of Agriculture. It takes 3 hours every year for my caseworker to come to my personal house and go over each and every piece of paperwork. You know the PACFA law. If you're not familiar, listeners, with PACFA, it's PACFA. And it is 150 pages long right now. And it, for stores, groomers, rescues, shelters, what's not included on that is breeders. So breeders in the state of Colorado don't have to be licensed. I do. Your shelters do. And the reason for that is a few years ago, right before COVID happened, during COVID, we tried to get breeders licensed for that. And there was such an uproar from the breeding community and from the mill community outside of the state that the law never passed. So yes, we need to absolutely look at some of these bans and see what cities and states are doing individually, but it also needs to be this bigger movement of education and licensing and regulation. And if we can start at a ground level like that, especially in Colorado, where we love our pets. I mean, what is it? Boulder, I think, and I'm from Boulder, I should know this, we're not owners, we're guardians.
Guardians, yep.
We have such a love of our pets and a love of our dogs and their family members. I don't know how we are still allowing suffering as a breed as a whole.
Well, the AKC goes on after that statement that I'll read here too, because I had a pretty strong reaction to this when I first read it back in the day. So they wrote, moreover, the unethical breeding ordinance's extensive list of conditions that it classifies as likely to cause suffering features medical terms usually only understood by veterinarians, other experienced veterinary professionals, and purebred dog breeders. However, the ordinance does not empower those with this type of level of specialized knowledge to enforce it. Instead, everyday peace and code enforcement officers are given that power. The AKC believes that this is a disparity that will lead to uninformed, onerous, inconsistent, and potentially prejudicial enforcement if the ordinance is enforced at all. Now, my reaction, being someone who enforces the laws, was,
Right.
well, it's my job to understand what the different breed characteristics are and what medical conditions they suffer from and why that is considered to be cruelty under Ojai's ordinance. And so it's a little insulting. They insist that, basically vets and professional dog breeders are the only ones who understand these breeds and what they need and what their conditions are, and anybody else doesn't, including those who actually have to enforce the law. I was just wondering what your thoughts were on that.
Yeah, those are some pretty rough words that they've used. Yeah, for sure. Wow, that's a big chunk, and I think that, again, I don't think that they are on the ground. I don't know that they are paying much attention, especially when it comes from such a high up in a corporation.
Mm-hmm.
They're not down here with those of us working on the ground, doing the rescues, doing the polling, doing the first couple minutes of emergency work.
Mm-hmm.
We had a girl that came in this summer. She'd been dropped at the shelter and she had a prolapsed vagina that was necrotic.
Mm-hmm.
And what it appeared is that somebody tried to breed her and they allowed her to give birth naturally, and it all fell out. Literally, it all fell out and it died. And the vet, when we got her, picked her up immediately from the shelter, got her into emergency surgery right away. The vet had said she would not have lasted another 24 hours, because it was all dead, and it was all dead up inside. I don't know that these large corporations see that. And that is that girl there. Her name was April. She's happy in a forever home, loves life. We got her taken care of, $6,000.
Right.
Got her taken care of. That was 100% because they were trying to breed her naturally. And this breed cannot give birth naturally. And I don't think that when these large statements, overwhelming statements like that are made, they're not seeing the blood and the death on the hands of those of us that are trying to save the lives. You work animal rescue. We cry once a day. It's going to happen. Something will happen. Sometimes they're happy tears because, oh my God, I finally got this dog adopted. But sometimes they're like, I can't save this one. Right. Because of their breeding, because of their congenital defects. I don't know that corporations see that part of it.
Well, let's talk a little bit about these dog shows. Most recently, the pug was named the winner of the latest dog show and Frenchies were once again named the most popular dog breed. I have a lot to say about that, but I want your opinions, Kelly. Like, when we get in these shows and these Brachycephalic breeds, they're the winners and they're the most popular breed. What does that tell you about how we value dogs, and then ultimately what's going to be the end result of that?
My first reaction, and you're not going to love this one, my first reaction when I saw the pug won, oh, thank God it wasn't the Frenchie.
I understand. Yes.
Because that's exactly how it goes. We see it with all the breeds. We see it with Malleys. We saw it with Dalmatians. Whatever the popular dog is, per media, per these shows, whatever, people are going to run out and get that breed. Mm-hmm. Everybody wants popular. Like I said, when I got my first Frenchie 10 years ago, nobody had Frenchies. Those of us who've had them for a long time, my vice president, we have dogs that are 10 or 12 years old. Average lifespan of a French Bulldog right now is 5.5. So we're seeing more and more congenital issues the more popular this breed gets. the more popular any brachycephalic gets. COVID really, really hurt this breed, and it might have hurt all breeds, but this is the breed I know. When COVID happened and everybody started getting dogs because we're all home, and I know in any animal protection, you've seen this, everybody ran out, and it really feels like everybody ran out and bought a female and a male French Bulldog.
Yep.
And just immediately started breeding. I do work with some really good breeders, some breeders who have done their research, who do their testing, who suddenly, something happens and they can't save the dog and they bring it to me. Or they retire their dogs at 3 or 4 years old, so I go get the dog instead of selling them on Craigslist or milling them out or anything like that. So I go get the dog. So I work with some good breeders who have put in the effort of the testing and the breeding and making sure they're AKC certified dogs, meaning they're the brindle, they're, the black and white, they're the typical non-exotic colors. And they sell their dogs for $2,000, $2,500, and they're giving puppies away after COVID because everybody and their brother is making French Bulldog puppies and selling them for $1,000.
Yep.
It's much more expensive than that to breed a dog. But back to the question, where are we going when we're seeing all these dogs winning the shows, and we're seeing Stella in Modern Family, who is the cutest thing ever, and I loved watching Modern Family because of that. We see these cute, gremlin-y, they've scientifically been bred to look like human babies, so that the generations, I don't have children myself. This is my baby. And this dog gives me the expressions that a human baby would give me. This does my maternal instinct for me. We've set this breed up to be this dog. We've set them up to be companions, to be on our laps, to dogpile like no other breed does. They're with us constantly. And that causes everybody to go buy a male and female, breed the dog without looking at genetics, without looking at testing, without informing the buyers and the owners, this dog might have a congenital defect and it's going to be dead at 3 years old. Yep. This dog might have a congenital defect and in 3 years it's going to be paralyzed and it's going to cost you $16,000 for an MRI and surgery.
Yep.
So the popularity without the education is a huge problem in America right now.
Did you ever happen to see, there was a documentary that came out in 2008 called Pedigree Dogs Exposed? It was released in the UK. Did you ever happen to see that?
I have not, but I will check that out for sure.
I'll briefly talk about it, and then, so our viewers also know if they haven't. So it was this documentary that came out. It was released in the UK, and it did expose pedigree dogs. They're breeding, the shows, over there in the UK. So we have like the AKC here, it's a UKC over there. And they talked about a lot of these different genetic and health conditions of all different kinds of dogs, pedigrees, Frenchies. They did happen to focus a lot on Cavalier King Charles Spaniels, but they looked at other ones too. And so, there's at some point in time in the documentary, they're showing this video of a Cavalier that has Chiari malformation and syringomyelia. And for those who don't know what that is, it's basically when, as a dog gets older, the skull does not grow fast enough or large enough to accommodate the brain. And so the brain is physically squeezed and it's extremely painful. And so this video shows this dog just kind of screaming. But they talk about, the other genetic conditions with French Bulldogs, with, the crippling hind legs of German Shepherds and such like that. And there's a lot of talk about inbreeding and how the UKC doesn't have health testing requirements for really almost any breed that goes into a show other than like an Irish setter or something. And they say it because it drives breeders away from the club. It's all about the money. And it's sad. It's really sad that you have, these organizations, these, the AKC is supposed to be, for everything dog. And it's really difficult when to battle, I think, the messaging of those larger companies where say that they're doing everything for dogs, or say that they, care about their health. And, it might be difficult to argue on its face, because when you look at these dog shows, you're like, these dogs are beautiful, they're healthy, they're fine. And people aren't seeing what we're seeing
Right.
in the field, in people's houses. When someone comes to you and is like, I don't know what to do with this dog, like she's paralyzed now. When I got my pug, she was a rescue, and I would have never, she didn't have any symptoms, when we first got her. And over time we found out, oh, she has horrific chronic ear infections and eye infections, and she developed epilepsy, and then she almost died because she had a half-hour long seizure. And I think it's important. So anyway, this is a very long tangent to say, I think that when people want to get any specific breed, but particularly these Brachycephalic breeds, it's like you have to do your homework. You have to know what you're getting into, because that really is horrible. When you have those cases and you tell people she's not going to survive after 3 years, who wants something like that to happen? And I think it's just really sad that a lot of times they put the breed standard over the actual health of the dog.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And, it's one thing on our social media pages and my Facebook especially. I'm very involved with my Facebook, and I'm very involved with my followers. We do not allow any naysaying about somebody who gives us a dog, because we try our best to educate. We only have, I think, 28,000 Facebook followers. We do our best to educate, but ultimately it does depend on the person buying the dog. But you should be able to trust your breeder, that your breeder is going to tell you the health issues, or, this is what could happen. It needs to come down to whoever's breeding the dog needs to be able to tell the owner what potential problems may exist. Because I have been at one after another owner surrenders. Like I said, we're almost 600 dogs in 10 years. And granted, probably about 25% came from breeders and shelters and other rescues. Only one time have I ever taken a dog from a family where they're not sobbing. It is heartbreaking to give your dog over to a stranger, knowing that you can't help your dog anymore. And I think that's one of the hardest parts of my job, is going to meet those families who did not educate themselves, nor do they readily find the information online. It's not easy to Google, like, French Bulldog health problems. Oh yeah, they might have allergies. They're going to snort a little bit. There's nothing out there until you get into those veterinary journals and really get into them. When you're reading 50% paralyzed and you're reading dies under anesthesia, they're hard to find. And it is the breeders and AKC and our lawmakers. There's got to be some kind of reconnect between all of us. Right. We need to be able to say, as rescues and animal protection workers, we need help. These owners deserve better. You have 2 small children in love with this dog, and I'm now taking your dog away because you can't afford $20,000 in a medical emergency. Yeah. Because that's what we're looking at with brachycephalic breeds. The BOA's surgery alone runs about $6,000. Okay. And that's a pretty standard surgery for French Bulldogs and brachycephalic breeds. And people are not easily and readily able to find that type of information.
Yeah. So I think a lot of the responsibility falls on the breeder too, though. I think that there are a lot of times where we let them off the hook, and because they're not as stringently regulated as how we, who are in animal welfare, seeing in the public, and they haven't had the type of legislation to hold them accountable
Right.
for these types of things. I mean, honestly, I feel like if you're a breeder and you are, either doing this small scale or large scale, as the law stands now, and I'm not saying that I'm for breeding, because as a matter of fact, I am not. But as the laws are written now, I feel like if they were to be altered, so that people could still breed animals, I think that it would be of great benefit to dogs and cats all over if there is like mandatory genetic testing if you're going to
Absolutely.
breed. And if it comes back that they have this or that condition or whatnot, you cannot breed them. You need to get them sterilized. You're
I think we got used to it. Many Labrador breeders check their hips, and they're
Mhm.
certified that the hips are good on the parents.
Yep.
And I remember doing that as a par course when I was a vet tech back in the early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s. Oh, we got another OFA. Let's check these hips for this breeder mama.
Mhm.
We need to get back into that too, where when you're buying a dog and you're going to a breeder and you've done your research on a dog, what testing should brachycephalic breeds be having on the parents?
Right.
That needs to be a matter of course with our breeders, that they're doing the IVDD testing, that they've checked palates, that they know what the congenital issues are. What are the allergies like? Because allergies on a Frenchie can be deadly.
Mhm.
They can go, you have to take out their eardrums. I've had to take out 5 or 6 set of eardrums this year due to allergies. How can we get our breeders to be good breeders and be faithful and respectful to the breed before we bring in these giant bands where we're just like, you know what, we're done. We're done.
Right.
We're not doing this anymore.
Right. It's
There's
just
got to be
gotten to
that
that
meeting.
point where it's so prolific and so prevalent that, everyone at Ojai was like, we are done. That's
Yep.
it. Because you won't listen, or, whatever the case is.
Yeah.
Um, Kelly, what do you guys do over there at Rocky Mountain French Bulldog Rescue? What do you guys do to raise awareness about the needs of Frenchies and how to care for them right now?
Right now we have like on our website, we have a section of education. We do what's called Medical Mondays. So every Monday, and we've kind of dropped off because of the holiday season, but every Monday you're going to find a 1 to 3 minute video on our Facebook page, on our YouTube, now on our website, of just little medical issues.
Mhm.
Um, we do a lot of highlights of medical issues on French Bulldogs because that is our main, that's what we do. We're special needs rescue. So we
Yeah.
look at these, anything from overheating to why do I have to have a dog backpack to go hiking in the mountains here?
Yep.
Because it's a dog. It should be able to walk. It's not a lab.
Right.
What's the difference between a lab and a Frenchie? Why will my Frenchie lay down after 3 blocks?
Right.
How do you prevent overheating? How do you take care of a French Bulldog that is overheating? We talk about, the pads of their feet of all dogs get hot, but what's special about French Bulldog pads?
Right.
So we have a Medical Monday section. We interview vets and neurologists and people specifically in those areas. A lot of it is just trying to get the word out. We do support our good breeders, but it's really about, if you're going to buy a dog, and we understand people are going to buy dogs, here's what you need to be asking your breeder. Here's what you need to be looking at.
Well, tell
People
me,
are,
because that was gonna be my next question. If someone's like, okay, I get it, there's all these issues, but I still want a Frenchie. What's your advice for
what are you
people who
looking
are?
for? Absolutely check out the parents. I mean, especially during COVID, I was astounded by how many people sent money online and never saw parents of the dogs. And they're like, I think I got scammed. I'm like, you got scammed. Never buy a dog unless you can see both parents.
Mhm.
And you want to look at the parents. You want to listen to their breathing. like I said, most French Bulldogs do need their palate shortened. They do need that boa surgery. Know that you're going to go in, probably within the first 2 years, spending $6,000 to $10,000 on medical of these dogs. That's the way it is. Look and see that, if they're running, can their parents run? How active do the parents seem to be? Look at the whelping center. How well were these dogs cared for? Check the parents for ears and skin. French Bulldogs have allergies. They're allergic to life. They really are. Some are allergic to grass.
Yeah.
They have horrible allergy issues. And I'm not saying don't go get the dog of your dreams, but have the education. Call me. Call any rescue. When you're any dog you're looking at, call the rescues that are local to you. Send them an email. We'll be able to tell you these are the very specific things you need to check. Check the backs. Do they have a UC Davis IVDD check on that dog? Most breeders don't even know UC Davis does that.
Yeah.
So what are they doing as far as, background on the parents of the dogs? How closely related are the parents? And AKC certified does not mean healthy.
Thank you for making that point. I think it's incredibly important.
Any exotic color, the Merrills especially that are running about $10,000, they can very easily be AKC certified. And then you can get it. They can be blind. We have a couple blind Merrills we've had this year. They can be deaf. So anytime there's those, oh my God, there's a fluffy one. French Bulldogs are not supposed to be fluffy.
Yeah.
They're not supposed to be blue. They're not supposed to be lilac. Any of those exotics, you're inviting health problems.
Well, Kelly, before we end, I want to say I appreciate you coming on. I think that it's critically important to talk to, people who are in rescue, who are pulling these dogs, breed-specific rescues and such, who know what they're talking about, like who aren't just rescuing Frenchies because they're fun and cute and that's all they know, but you clearly are very educated about the breed. You clearly know what they mean. You're passionate about making sure that people understand, are educated about what to look for, what's going to be good and not, and then ultimately supporting those who are doing a good job with breeding and avoiding those who are not. Yeah. So is there anything that you want to leave for our viewers here that they are aware of? I know that, like I had mentioned at the beginning of this podcast, it's December Giving Tuesday. And so I know that a lot of the work that you guys do is all fund generated.
Yeah. Yeah, we're 100% donor generated. The weird thing is because we're so specialized, we can't get grants because corporations, and thank you for everyone who donates to us, corporations like to see a return on their investment. And grantors are the same way. They want to see that return on investment. So when you're as specialized as we are, and our dogs, on average, our dogs cost us $5,500 per dog, and then have an adoption fee of $300. So that difference is other rescues are able to spay and neuter their dog and adopt the dog out, and it costs them $75. So we don't get grants because we don't have that return on investment. So I appreciate you bringing that up, that, donations are very much needed for such a specialized area. We were able to adopt out 48 dogs so far in 2024. We have had to turn away 41 dogs, and that's heartbreaking. Our donations are down $100,000 this year from over last year. And a lot of it is because of that spurt at COVID where we just got dog after dog after dog after dog. And it really did deplete our funds, and everybody's tired. Donors are tired. We're tired. All of us are tired. So on that note, I do want to say, especially with French Bulldogs, health insurance. You look into pet insurance because none of us. One of my girls, who she was 11 when she passed this summer. She got this weird, like, had to have an exploratory surgery because she ate cardboard and her
Mhm.
stomach couldn't digest it, and it was a $13,000 surgery. Thank
Yeah.
God for pet insurance, because none of us expect that.
Yeah.
So if I had been, I don't want to say civilian, if I had been a civilian and I hadn't had pet insurance and I didn't know about pet insurance, I would have had to call a rescue, because that's not a normal bill. But French Bulldogs are going to cost you, like I said, $6,000 to $10,000 the first 2 years, and then
Mhm.
God forbid something goes wrong, like they go paralyzed, and you're looking at $16,000 to $20,000.
Yeah.
Pet insurance is super expensive. Mine just went up $100 a month a dog,
Mhm.
but this is not a breed I would have without it. It's
Or at least a
not.
backup plan.
Or a backup plan, really good credit cards, anything along those lines.
Because sometimes pet insurance doesn't cover, pre-existing conditions.
Pre-existing, yeah. So if you're going to buy a puppy, get one with pet insurance. Yeah. And a lot of our rescues, pet insurance won't cover because they are already pre-existing conditions. Yeah. So look into that. Just be aware that this rescue exists for a reason. I think when I meet people like in the wild and in public, and they're like, French Bulldogs need a rescue, I'm like, French Bulldogs need a rescue.
They
You
do.
know, look into your local rescues, because there are good dogs, and most of them we've taken care of the issues. We have one boy right now who was paralyzed, and now he walks like a drunken sailor, and he's got these little floppy back legs, and he can get around really well, and he's the sweetest, best dog ever. Like, I am in love with this dog. But he's not 100% perfect.
Right.
So, but look into your rescues, look into your shelters. Purebred dogs are all over the place right now.
Yep. 25% of all shelter dogs are purebred dogs right now.
That's insane.
Kelly, if anybody wants to donate or if they want to foster or adopt, what can you give them the information so that they have that to be able to do that?
Yeah. So the best place to look is on our website, and it's just the initials of the rescue, Rocky Mountain French Bulldog Rescue. So it's www.rmfbr.org. Yeah, that's the best place to look, and it'll give you the links to like all our Facebook and all that stuff. It's a really cute little website. You just click on whichever dog figure you want and go to see like the Adopt Me section or Donate Now section, anything like that.
And the dogs that you adopt out there, spayed and neutered, right? And
Absolutely. Absolutely.
vaccinated.
Yep.
All.
We are licensed by PACFA, by the state of Colorado Department of Agriculture, and that's one of the things. That's one of our laws, is they do have to all be spayed and neutered. So yes, absolutely, all spayed and neutered. You get all medical records. You get to talk to the fosters. We have a really great community of those who have fostered and adopted from us, and often, they get together and they do things together. Usually, we can always have, if you go out of town and need a dog sitter, there's usually somebody from our foster group that's willing to watch your dog. So
That's
we're
so
a very
nice.
close knit community.
That's very nice. I love that. I love that. Um, all right, Kelly. Well, thank you. I appreciate it, and I appreciate you being here and all of your expertise on the
No,
breed.
thank you.
And thank you to all of our viewers for tuning in to the AWIT podcast. And just remember, spay is the way.